All right, hopefully everyone has me okay there. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the time and place for the Grand Forks Growth Fund Committee for September 29th, 2025. All right, staff, please take attendance.
Berg.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, can you hear?
All right.
Can you hear us?
Yep, we got
Okay.
you.
Berg. Crary.
Here.
Friedals.
Here.
Holf. Asowski.
Here.
Whitney.
Here.
Wolf. We have a quorum.
Mr. Chair, could we have Tricia Berg say I didn't hear her, just to make sure if her microphone's working. Yeah, Tricia, we're not hearing you unless somebody else is hearing you. And you are unmuted.
She texted online and says here. Is that good enough?
Yeah, that's good. Just so when she starts speaking, we won't be able to hear her unless we can get something corrected.
All right. Did roll call. So item number 2, the Hive Management Agreement.
Good evening, Chair Friedhoff, members of the committee. My name is Haley Rosasson, and I'm here to discuss the Hive Management Agreement. Since the selection of Grand Sky was approved by the JDA in July, we have been negotiating with Grand Sky on this agreement. And City Attorney Dan Gossett will continue on with an overview and more of the agreement specifics.
The updated one. Chair Friedolfs, we just got concluded some further additions, so Mr. Goss is going to go through a red line version and hit some highlights for you, Chair.
Great, thank you.
All right. Thank you, members of the committee. I'm going to go through the agreement. It's about 31 pages. I won't go through each and every paragraph, but it was sent out on Friday over the weekend, and today there was a few additional changes. I will highlight those changes as we move through the agreement itself, and it should be on your screen right now. A couple of things I want to start out with. First is some of the defined terms. First of all is what's called Hive operating revenue. That's all revenues that could be generated off of this facility. There's exceptions, however. Naming rights are not part of the Hive operating revenue. We'll talk about that as to why some things are excluded. The manager, tenant member services revenue is also not part of the Hive operating revenue. And then any revenue that might be generated from a city or a JDA event. In addition, there's these are kind of key terms: Hive operating expenses, which means all expenses incurred in connection with operating and promoting the Hive under the agreement, including what are called Hive building expenses. I'll talk about those in a second. The management fee that would be paid to the third-party manager, and then other costs that are incurred by the JDA under the terms of the agreement. And those are like stationary, they're legal fees, things that would be incurred by the JDA itself for the Hive. Again, excluded from that definition is Hive capital expenses, manager expenses, and we'll talk about those in a few minutes, and then also manager, tenant, member services expenses. The other defined term is in section 1.17, Hive building expenses. Remember now, Hive building expenses are incorporated and part of the Hive operating expenses, okay? And those are basically day-to-day operational expenses, utilities, insurance, things like that for the building itself, IT expenses. What's not included, as you can see, is Hive capital expenses, the manager expenses, and then member, tenant, member services expenses are excluded. And this is where we get into how we determine Hive operating profit. That's basically just the Hive operating revenue less the expenses. If there's revenues exceed expenses, then there's going to be a profit. And likewise, if there's a loss, that's operating expenses over operating revenue. Hive capital expenses is at 1.18. Those are things that are building equipment, infrastructure, building components that exceed $5,000 in costs and have a useful life of 5 years or more. This is where another key term are what are called manager expenses. And those are all expenses that the manager incurs in order to perform various services that are outlined in this agreement, including all the costs and expenses for Hive events. And Hive events are all activities, programs, anything that's conducted in that building. Advertising, promoting, group sales, anything that the manager has to do to perform the services under this agreement, those are manager expenses. Again, be mindful that operating expenses, and we'll get into this, the Hive operating expenses excludes these manager expenses, which means they're excluded from the expense from that is paid by the JDA. The next key term are what are called manager tenant member services. There was a request by the third party that they may provide certain services to the tenants and members beyond the scope of just the services that are outlined in the agreement. And that we came up with the term manager tenant member services, which are, again, those services that this third party would provide to the tenants or members of the Hive. Section 3, there's a lot of other defined terms, but those are kind of the key defined terms within the agreement that get embedded throughout. The next, I'll skip over Section 2, which is just an interpretation provision. Section 3 is the engagement of the third-party manager, and at this point, we don't have a name for the manager yet. It hasn't been. I think it's going to be created in Delaware and be authorized to do business in North Dakota. So Section 3 engages the manager to do these services, and the manager accepts that engagement. And the management fee is a monthly fee of $33,333.33 per month. That equates to a $400,000 amount for a 12-month period of time. There's, after the first year, starting on October 1 of next year, assuming this gets approved, the management fee, that monthly management fee, would be increased by a CPI index factor. There's also, and we've given the example here, under certain indexes, what that would mean over the course of a couple of years. That's in Section 3.2.3. Section 3.2.4 provides that the manager would be eligible for 25% of that Hive operating profit. Again, that's the Hive operating revenue. If it exceeds the Hive operating expenses, they'd share 25% of that profit amount. This is where the manager expenses, that defined term, everything that's needed to perform those services, they're the obligation of the manager, and all those debts and liabilities to perform those services are the manager's expenses, and they're solely responsible to pay those. The next is Section 4, and you can see some of the redlining. The first one is in Section 4.1.1. A request was made by the manager, the proposed manager, to change it from a first class to a leading UAS technology accelerator. But Section 4.1 lists all the services that are to be performed, and it's fairly expansive. I mean, there's 24 subsections, and some subsections even have further subsections to them. So they're pretty broad as to the services that are being performed. For example, first one is to maintain the Hive as a leading UAS technology accelerator. 4.12 talks about performing and managing all the Hive events that occur. 4.13, they are to provide a operations manual within 6 months of the effective date. And I'll just kind of go through a couple of the additional changes here. 4.15, there's a change to try to maybe define a little bit of what the mission of the Hive is. Again, to be a leading UAS technology accelerator and to build on the UAS industry within the region. 4.16 and 4.17, there were some changes made. First, to make it to provide that the manager will endeavor to build these partnerships, will endeavor to provide guidance to those within the facility. And then as far as tracking and outcomes, the change was made because some tenants may not want to provide their information. So if we can provide the information to the JDA without identifying who the tenants or their milestones, that seemed to be a reasonable change to those types of services. 4.12, again, this is to pursue and generate Hive operating revenues. Again, that's to the benefit of both the JDA and the manager, because if the revenues go up, then there's a potential for an operating profit, and they would share in that profit amount. 4.15, here's another change that was made since the version that was sent to you. Removing the word continuously, it kind of made sense after you take a look at it, because they are to report to the JDA at least annually or more often as requested by the JDA to provide information about Hive events, advertising, sponsorships, things like that. 4.2 talks about extra services. If there is additional services that the JDA wants the manager to perform, that's not already enumerated in section 4.1, the parties would then negotiate to come up with an amount that would be paid to the manager to perform those additional services. If they can't reach an agreement after good faith efforts are done, then the JDA can go out and hire a third party if needed be to perform those extra services. One of the extra services is going to be those city events and JDA events that would occur over there. So if the city had an event over at the Hive or the JDA, that would be deemed to be an extra service. And if they wanted the manager to assist in those efforts, then there'd be an additional amount payable to the manager. 4.3 and 4.4 just set out the standards of performance and the time and effort requirements. A couple of things to point out. Again, all the employees, staff, and contractors of the manager are their responsibility, not the responsibility of the JDA. That's in section 4.5. 4.6, the manager can enter into contracts in his own name for the performance of the Hive. The only exception would be the leases and the membership agreements. Those would be in the name of the JDA. 4.7, there was a slight change, more of a clarifying change, is that the JDA, the city, the manager, tenants and members of the Hive will have access to this scheduling, online scheduling and tracking for Hive events. Nothing really significant with that particular modification. 4.8, again, the ownership and use of the Hive is still going to be with the JDA. If there's any changes to it, it has to come back to the JDA for approval on those items. 4.11, we added a non-compete clause that the manager will only focus on this particular facility, not in any other facility, absent approval from the JDA. Again, the approval would not be unreasonably withheld. So if they, for example, had somebody that they thought they were doing a good job for, they wanted to manage their facility, the JDA could certainly authorize that. But we put in a non-compete clause so that the focus would be on this particular facility. 4.12 is an operating budget. The JDA has the information with respect to those operating expenses. The manager will have information about the operating revenues and capital expenses that they may seek with the facility. They will provide that information to the JDA, and then an operating budget will be formulated from that information along with the information the JD already has with respect to its expenses. 4.13.2, again, this is just some information that they're going to provide to the JDA. Again, if there's information without identifying the member or tenant, that we've added that clause to that particular paragraph as far as record reporting requirements are concerned. 4.19, this is the financial expectations. This was included just to let the manager understand why the JD was entering into this. There's obviously going to be some additional expenses that will be incurred with this new management fee. There may be some expenses that are going to be saved by going through this management, but the management fee would exceed those cost savings. And so we wanted to make sure that that there was an understanding as the JDA is entering into this with some expectation that that financial result will improve and that the manager will endeavor to improve those financial results. And that was a change that was made today in section 4.19. But again, just to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page here as to the rationale for entering into this expectation or hope, the understanding is that revenues will increase even though the expenses will increase as well to a certain degree. 4.20, this is the performance of those manager tenant member services. The manager will receive all those revenues, have all the expenses, but we've added language in here that the performance of the services, this is in 4.20.4, the performance of the services at the Hive take priority and they can't conflict with those services. If they're going to perform services to a tenant or member, they can do that as long as it doesn't conflict with their primary duties to perform the services under the agreement. Also, the tenants do not have to utilize the manager if they don't want to. We've added that language as well, and the manager was fine with that particular language. The JDA's involvement, the JDA pays the operating expenses like I've been talking about, as well as these capital expenses, but they're subject to approval to the JDA. There's an exception, of course, if there's an emergency that needs to be done, then we can go forward and get that work done as quickly as possible. However, if these capital expenses come forward and the JDA decides not to go forward with it, the parties would then try to negotiate in good faith, and if at the end of the day it causes the inability to perform the services under there, the agreement can be terminated at that point, and that's in section 5.1.4. Operating revenues, Hive operating revenues all go to the JDA. The manager might be able to collect those revenues, but they have to turn it over to the JDA under section 5.2. 5.3 are, again, JDA events and city events. Those are things that those two entities would put on. All the costs and expenses would be paid by the city or the JDA, and all revenues from those events would be paid over to the city and JDA, and not within those Hive operating expenses or revenues either. Section 6 provides insurance and indemnity. The manager will indemnify the JDA and the city for acts or omissions that their agents or employees may cause a liability event with respect to the JDA or the city. Pretty standard type of language. There was one question, and this is with respect to we've asked for insurance coverages to the tune of $2 million per person and $4 million for liability protection generally. The manager has indicated that those seems kind of high and the premiums are high, and so what we've asked them to do is to gather information as to what a lower level of insurance would be and what the premiums would be for the levels that are in the agreement right now versus what they would prefer. And hopefully between now and Monday, when the JDA considers it, we'd have a better sense as to where things lie. That's still kind of an open issue as to the amount of insurance coverage. It won't be any higher than the $2 to $4 million, but it might be lower depending on where those pricing numbers come out. And then 6.2.8, this is a provision that if, for example, something would happen where more insurance coverage would be needed, if that gets triggered, then there would be an effort made where the parties would first seek some sort of alternative or solution to that, or possibly the additional insurance being provided. Short of that, however, if an alternative can't be provided or the additional insurance that would be triggered by this provision is not provided, then the termination could occur. Either party could terminate the agreement. And in discussions with the manager today, that wouldn't trigger any type of payment if there is a termination under that clause. So if, for example, using the $2 to $4 million, something would happen where the JDA said, geez, we have to go to $3 to $6 million, for example, and that insurance amount wasn't provided or an alternative to that wasn't provided, then either party could terminate the agreement without fee or penalty. The reason is that if that would occur, then the JDA is facing additional liability risk without the insurance protection afforded to it. Section 7 are just representations that each party provides to each other, essentially that they've got the authority to execute this agreement. Section 8, the termination, it's a 5-year term of the agreement. It reads August 31 with an October 1 effective date. It should read September 30th of 2030. We'll have to make that change. There's a 5-year extension possibility under 8.1.3. The parties are to review the agreement on an annual basis, and doesn't mean that they'll make any changes to it, but they can pull out the agreement on, like I said, on an annual basis. The termination, we can mutually agree to terminate the agreement, or either party can terminate with 120 days advance notice. If the JDA terminates for reasons other than an event of default, there would be a termination fee of equal to 4 months of the then existing monthly manager fee. And I've given the example using the current monthly manager fee. If that would happen, there'd be a payout of a little over $133,000 in that event. If there was an event of default, however, and you have to give the other side the opportunity to cure, but if they don't cure and there's an event of default, then the non-defaulting party can terminate, and the termination would be without any type of fee, termination fee under those set of circumstances. And you can pursue any other available remedies that you may have. The effect of the termination is essentially the manager discontinues all services, turns over all funds that it may have, turns over all the equipment it may have that belong to the JDA. I apologize for the length, but I think I've gotten through most of the major topics of the agreement, and I could answer any questions now, or if you have questions on any other part of the transaction. I guess Maureen and Todd are also available, and it looks like Mr. Sawyer is here as well. So,
I have questions.
Sure.
So if we decide to sell the Hive, we'll have to pay up 4 months of the management fees, correct, Mr. Gusted?
If we ended up terminating the agreement under a 4-month notice, and if that's what the buyer was contemplating, that they would take over the management, then yes.
Okay, and then you keep talking about management, but we kind of agreed on Grand Sky, didn't we?
Well, it's going to be a limited liability company that they will be forming.
Okay.
I don't know if it's Grand Sky representatives, but I don't think it's going to be Grand Sky. Whatever entity they have operating that, it'll be a different LLC as I understand it.
Okay, will we get to know what that entity is?
For sure.
And at what point?
That I don't know. You'd have to ask Mr. Sawyer as to where they're at in forming that entity.
But we can't sign this agreement until they have that entity, correct?
That would be an accurate statement.
Okay, thank you.
This is Mike. I have a real quick question. As far as that 5-year renewal, does that require like mutual consent with the Tubi LLC, or does it automatically happen?
Let me pull out the provision. I didn't dedicate it to memory here. It's the mutual consent of both parties.
Okay. And then I think is Mr. Sawyer going to answer questions as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, I'm here.
All right. So my questions are just real quick, mainly on EP for hiring, because making sure everyone read it. So manager responsibilities: oversee day-to-day facility operations and tenant services, develop programming for startups and scale-ups, handle marketing, outreach, community, provide financial management and reporting with city staff, manage Hive events, and create an operating manual within 6 months, and submit quarterly performance reports. What are you looking for? Probably, and you don't have to give an exact number, but hiring wise, like what do you probably think you're looking at EP wise?
I think, Mr. Friedolfsson, members of the commission, I am a little unsure exactly. Certainly at the outset, we plan to utilize existing resources under service agreements to Grand Sky to use some of the financial staff for financial reporting, accounting, some of our marketing team and things like that that are experienced in the UAS industry. So we'll definitely want to be using those folks to start and then start to implement a plan for exactly who we're going to hire. We have an intention and have started conversations with Mr. Ryan to come over to our side and be an employee. We also anticipate that we're going to need some kind of operations manager. And then candidly, I think the next of the original of new hires that will happen relatively quickly will be a small fleet of interns to kind of make sure that we always have people to man the doors and assist tenants for events and things like that. Did I answer your question?
Yep, that was perfect. And I was just going to ask about internships, because that seems to be a thing the Hive does well and people seem to enjoy it. So
yeah, we hope to be able to get a whole bunch of people that can support us for lots of hours in a week, not many hours in a week, whatever fits schedules, but get everyone integrated into supporting all the different activities going on.
all right, that's all I have, Tom. Thank you.
May I answer a question that Ms. Rodowski? Ma'am, it'll take us about 48 to 72 hours to form the final entity that will sign the agreement. So I anticipate having that LLC in place in plenty of time to be able to sign the agreements. We have names and branding and all kinds of things for an announcement.
Oh, okay, thank you. I guess
Sure.
I didn't realize that quickly.
Yep.
So, thank you.
May I answer any other questions?
I move approval.
Do you have a second?
I'll second it with a recognition that looks like both Amy and Russell have some questions too, but I'll second it to further the discussion.
Yeah, we can probably take them as part of the further discussion. Totally allowable.
All right, you want to go ahead, Amy, and ask
Yeah,
your-
so, just a couple questions. If we could get some clarification on what's the difference between the services that would be under, say, 4.1 and the sections of 4.1.7 versus those extra services where it looks like, if I'm understanding the contract, there would be some additional fees that would then be paid either to those providing those services. Can you just clarify that a little bit as part of the contract?
Yes, ma'am, and forgive me for a second while I put my glasses on and get into 4.1.7. As I recall, 4.1.7 was fairly explicit with types of services that we would provide as part of this. However, for example, 4.1.7 subpart C talks about providing access to shared services, legal, accounting, marketing. We are not a lawyer. We cannot provide legal advice. So we would have to, try to create, what I interpret that to mean is we would be trying to create a relationship where we bring law firms that may know about the particular things some of our tenants and members are interested in, and create the connection, but not directly provide legal services. And so that's an example of an area that I don't think we're going to be able to, do specifically. Also, Part A talks about curating and managing cohort-based rolling programs for scale-ups and startups. We're going to try to work with partners. In fact, I think there are several here in the community that could help us build some of that. But I see less startup companies. I think there's already a couple very good places in the community for startups to go. And I think we want to focus a little bit more to differentiate around scale-ups, folks that are looking to get their first contracts with DoD, folks that are looking for bringing a technology to bear and looking for partners with that. So we kind of see some cohort around that possibility. But to directly answer your question, what would differentiate some kinds of services? I'm stalling, trying to answer other things and come up with something in my mind about exactly what it might be. Sorry, Dan's got something.
I've got an answer. If there was a city event or a JDA event that was going to occur at the Hive, those would be, and we asked Mr. Sawyer's LLC to manage that particular event. That would be an extra service. We would then go to him and say, this is what we're looking for. We'd attempt to negotiate, and if we couldn't negotiate and reach an agreement, then either the city would perform that or hire a third party to do that work.
So that would fit under like section 4.2, Mr. Goff said, that extra service. I'm just trying to.
Correct.
For clarity for other people if they're trying to figure out what's the difference, right?
Correct. 4.1 is pretty extensive as far as services, but there may be things that, one, we're not thinking about here, sitting here today, or the city event or the JDA events were specifically outlined.
Okay. Yeah, that was, I think, for me, I just wanted clarification if someone was going to ask questions about what's the difference between, these tenant services versus these extra services. So I think that's for me right now, my questions. I'll pass to Mr. Crary.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Gossett, Todd, everybody on the city side that was involved in getting this put together, and then Mr. Sawyer and your whole team as well. So appreciate that. It's not necessarily as much of a question as more of just a statement for, I guess for the public record, is that I think if people were to go on and review, when they see a $400,000 management fee, that might jump out like, whoa, But I think you really need to dive in, and if anybody were to read the entire agreement, currently the city is losing, or I shouldn't say losing, the city is contributing about $150,000 a year, and so the decision though by hiring the management company would actually, based on just rough back of the napkin, looking at the budget for 26, a savings of roughly, we'll say, $250 to the city, right? So by outsourcing it to professionals, not only is there some cost saving there, so the full 400 is not just like, you're writing a check and you're losing all that money. You're also getting value add and having professional come in to hopefully scale it up and make it profitable. And I like the idea of having the management team have the opportunity to share in that revenue. It's currently, or in the profits, it's currently, losing money. And I think that's awesome that they have the aspirations to not only make this a great community asset to build companies and to build jobs and to build that whole UAS ecosystem, which they're equipped to do. But not only that, but actually could be a net positive for the city. And I think that just kind of shows a testament of having private, jump in and trying to take the bull by the horns and utilizing it the best way that we possibly can. So kind of kudos to everybody involved. Appreciate Grand Sky's team submitting the application and how far everything's come. So yeah, that was more or less just a comment. I guess one question I maybe would have, Mr. Sawyer, which was brought up previously, not in this meeting, but in previous meetings. Is there any intention, and it could be done at any time, but potentially, if it turns profitable, that, you could get it off the city's books and acquiring it? Or, I noticed that there wasn't anything with a first right of refusal for purchase or an option to purchase, which again, we can do that at any time. But just wondering your kind of overall thoughts on that.
Sure, and I'm happy to give you, members of the commission, forgive me, protocols off my list right now. It's late in the day for me. So we have thought about that, and we've done some financial examination, very rudimentary and very high level, about what the city has paid for the building, what the city has, and I don't have a complete accounting by any means, of what has been invested into the Hive. And we have to differentiate from the building and facilities and equipment from the actual business of managing the Hive. And I think those are two distinct things that are not yet wrapped together well enough. And so we are certainly interested in that. And some preliminary discussions, I think we all kind of agreed that that would burden this agreement with something that we didn't need to burden it with at the moment. There is a grant in place. That grant has repercussions to change the terms and conditions, and that changing those terms and conditions will go through its process, and then there would be an opportunity to possibly sell the building. I believe that what our interest level is we believe we can make it so that it is profitable and that conversation becomes worthwhile. That's what we are going to endeavor to do. That's what we are going to work pretty hard to do. And I think that some of the things, there's a whole variety of issues that we believe we need to take on, all of them positive, which is starting to increase rents to start to match what the companies really want to pay. I think we can start to create additional services within the Hive that will attract more companies. And I also look for what are the indirect benefits of a company bringing 3 or 4 people to Grand Forks that are now renting apartments maybe downtown and doing things like that. So I think there's some indirect benefits. At Grand Sky, we track the direct, the indirect benefits of what we do. We track the taxes that all our tenants aggregate pay, and we can rattle off those economic numbers any given moment, and there's a success story. We believe that can be happening here at the Hive too.
I appreciate that, and I didn't want to put words in your mouth, but just I knew that previously you guys had expressed that, and I know from Mr. Gossick comment, there's a lot of nuances just with the grants and the EDA, and I mean I think there'd be a long process, but I just think it's good, it's encouraging, I guess, maybe to hear just from as a citizen perspective that the management team is confident in one, not necessarily in 2026, but is confident on making it profitable long term, and obviously you're kind of standing behind it by just saying, hey, it could be something we could acquire, because I know this is a conversation not for this meeting, but the growth fund, the JDA has, and Mayor Bochensky, kind of getting some of those assets off the city's books and back into private to not compete with the private sector. So just kind of good to hear that, the management team is in line with long-term city vision as well. So again, don't want to put those words in your mouth. So appreciate you stating that.
No problem. Thank you.
No more further questions for me.
Thank you. Yeah, so just final comments. I think this is going to be wildly successful. I think we've watched it grow over the last few years, and we've kind of reached the peak of where we can go without extra help here. And I think, Tom, you and your team taking this over is going to be nothing but successful. So good luck, and appreciate everything you've done for the community.
I have a follow-up question. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I don't know how to raise my hand in here, so I apologize.
It would be the raise hand button.
I couldn't find it. I saw the reaction button. But may I ask a follow-up question, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Maureen, this is for Maureen. Have we budgeted for this year, that 400,000? I mean, in 2026, or even this year at all?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mrs. Selsky. So we've still been in negotiations as we are putting the 2026 budget together. So this would be a budget amendment to the 2026 budget. What we did have is part of the 26 budget, a city contribution toward the as part of the revenue for the JDA for the Hive of roughly $126,000. That is a portion of the funding model here. So we would amend, and that's part of what Dan and Mr. Sawyer have gone to, that the expectation is to generate more revenue, to keep us even with that picture. Some of the expenses will be coming off of our books with the salaries and marketing expenses will be, and that will help offset those management fees. But when this gets approved, we'll have to do a budget amendment.
Okay, and will you, like, do you know the amount of those salaries or anything at this point?
So we had part of the 26 budget, roughly 130,000 in there for staffing costs that would come off of our books and would be absorbed by Grand Sky or the LLC they developed.
Okay, and then do we have anything that's even in the, because we're going to enter into this agreement still in 2025. So do we have anything in our budget for this year even? I mean, that's still what, like $66,000?
Right, so we had staffing budgeted in here, so that, we wouldn't use our full budget on that portion, but it'll all be some shifting in dollars here for when this does get approved and, prorate for the year, what those numbers will ultimately be. But ultimately, we had about 121,000 city contribution going toward the operations of the Hive for 2025.
Okay.
That's net between revenue and expense.
So as soon as we sign the deal, if we sign this agreement with them, does that immediately wipe these employees off our books? Do they then work for Mr. Sawyer?
Yeah, we'll have to go through that process of just transition of when that occurs. I guess I'm not exactly sure of the exact timing of that process.
Okay, and is there like a fund or a page I can look at inside my budget book for this?
So this, I guess probably the easiest page to look at, Mrs. Husky, is with our 5996 fund, our Job Development Authority fund. When you're looking at your budget binder, if you're looking at that document, there's a one-page summary at the front of that that breaks out the Hive revenue and expense on that summary sheet.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we have a first from Mrs. Owski and a second from Mr. Hulth. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I move adjournment.
Second.
Second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.